Okay. Morning, everyone, and welcome to Town Tuesday for December 2nd, 2025. This morning, I thought we'd be talking about the little bit of a horror story that is annexation by ordinance. Um, let's just go ahead and jump right into it now. I just want to say before we get started properly here that we're talking specifically about annexation by ordinance rather than some of the related topics. We're going to touch on things like orderly agreements and contested cases, but we're not really going to cover them. If there's enough interest in this, then I'd be happy to jump into that topic as well. But I feel like this one's the real pain point here. Um, this is kind of how this stuff can happen. Just starting from the top. When we are dealing with a situation where property is owned by a city, it abuts the city, and either urban or suburban in character are about to become so, city gets to just kind of pass an ordinance and take it. Similar situation with where if a piece of land is totally surrounded. So if township property is totally surrounded by land that is within city limits, that's not necessarily city owned, but land that is within the limits of the city, and the property is urban or suburban in character or about to become so, then the city gets to more or less just pass an ordinance and take it. Now, there are a couple of things that I think are interesting about this. There's no acreage limit. Now, the largest case that I was able to find was 918 acres. There are probably some bigger ones hiding out there that didn't get appellate review, but just to give you a sense of how big this stuff can get. So that's Gilbert versus Minnesota State Office of Strategic and Long Range Planning back in 2002. 918 acres was taken. Town has no power to object. So there's kind of nothing that can be done about that from the town's perspective. But more strikingly, the landowners do not get the chance to object in total surround cases. That case that I was just talking about was one in which the landowners themselves were the ones who were raising this objection all the way to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals told them basically to go pound sand here. There's another very striking kind of fact about it, and for annexations in this style, that is the subdivision two of 414.033, the best interests of the territory or the people on it are not a consideration. That's not coming from me. That is coming from the Minnesota Court of Appeals. You'll see the quotation there on your screen if you want the gory details together with the citation if you are too into the weeds here. But I can tell you that is an honest representation of something that has been written by the Minnesota Court of Appeals. City does not have to care about the best interests of the people that they're taking stuff from under these cases. Now, you might take a look at that and think, hey, okay, fine. They don't have to, they can take as much land as they want. They don't have to, we don't get to object. The landowners don't get to object, but at least it has to be urban or suburban in character before they are allowed to take it. And that is true. Yes, 414.033 does say the land has to be urban or suburban in character or quote unquote about to become so. Um, but the trouble is that's not defined. And quite frankly, given the actual cases that we have been seeing here at the association, I can tell you that that is not a phrase that is going to be much of a defense. We've seen plenty of instances where literal farm fields have been annexed under these rules, and so it's a little difficult to imagine what would be rural enough to not count. Now, our sister organization, who's I usually do quite appreciate in many contexts, but in this we're a little adverse. They go so far in their guidance as to say that if you are meeting those characteristics, so not just the total surround or the city owned, but also the 120 acre method that we're going to talk about, that makes it urban or suburban in character, no matter what the character of the activity on the land that's actually taking place here. So I would not put your eggs in this particular basket. Though that said, we haven't gotten an actual opinion on what that means from the Court of Appeals. So if you're particularly mad about an upcoming annexation, you want to fight it on that particular grounds. I think that there is a bit of legal wiggle room There's some ambiguity in that statute, and you potentially could take a run at that, but just in practice, this has not proved much of a defense, I gotta say. Okay. So we talked about city owned, we've talked about total surround. Another method of annexation is what we call the 120 acre method. So city may annex up to 120 acres by ordinance if there's abutment, that is the land is next to the city boundary. Public wastewater facilities do not serve the land and are not otherwise available. Um, and all owners of the property to be annexed petition the city for annexation. This is one of the reasons that I kind of called this one off, just because that's one of the requirements, which makes it, I think, by our lights, rather less objectionable than some of the other ones. Um, but the final requirement is sort of avoiding end arounds of the first couple. So it must not be contiguous to any land owned by the same owners that was annexed under the statutory provision in the preceding 12 months and which would cumulatively exceed 120 acres. That is, you can't use this one to just keep biting off land, biting off land, biting off land. This one does have an acreage limit. That is a little bit more practical. Um, the small lot method. This one is really interesting because it doesn't require abutment. That is, cities can jump fences that a town is trying to put up here. So there's a preliminary or final plot for subdivision. Residential lots that average 21,780 square feet or less in area, and it must be within 2 miles of the city's limits. So, we're talking about a situation where we have subdivided up to a bunch of smallish residential plots. So really, this one actually does require, in a practical way, that the land be suburban in character, at least, or about to become so. Nevertheless, potentially troubling in this one because it allows you to sort of jump the edges of the city and then create situations where there are total surrounds or other kind of pieces of annexation. Now, in this case, the town has no power to object, but there are certain procedural requirements. So, you can check their paperwork and you can use that potentially as a line of defense. So they have to hold a public hearing. They have to give 30 days written notice by certified mail to the town or towns affected and all landowners within and contiguous to the area to be annexed. Um, okay, couple more methods here. So the plotted method is interesting because again we're back in the situation where there's no territorial limit. This can be as big as somebody wants it to be. Unlimited amount of platted land if it abuts the city and the majority of owners petition to have the land annexed. Now this one we actually do get to object to, so that's kind of nice. Pretty similar, but limited in terms of territory is the 200 acre rule. So this one, they can annex up to 200 acres of unplatted land if it abuts, and we've got a majority petition. So we can object to that one. But yeah, again, here are kind of the procedural details to be aware of. Now, I don't expect, obviously, anybody to remember this in any detail, but the point of this is just to create that little antenna, that little flag in the back of your head. If you're in this situation, oh, they do have to follow some requirements. So I should go look that up. I should go call the attorneys. I should go pull the town manual just to see what those are, to see if we've got a chance of fighting this thing. So, okay. So we've got a petition from the landowners. Within 10 days of filing the petition with the city, it has to be filed with the chief ALJ, the town board, the county board, and the city of any other, the council of any other city that borders the land to be annexed. Within 90 days, the town board or even one of the abutting cities can submit written objections to the chief ALJ. And in that case, you're off to the races. You've got a contested case annexation at that point. The ordinance, so this is the language specifically about the hearing. If the petition does not include every landowner, then the ordinance shall not be enacted until the municipal council has held a hearing on the proposed annexation. It's 30 days mailed notice to property owners within the area to be annexed. Okay. 60/40 method. This is one of the ones that we've been targeting at the legislature and we've been trying to get rolled back here, frankly. But the basics are if a property is 60% surrounded by city limits and no more than 40 acres inside, then a city may annex that property based on those physical characteristics alone. Once again, there's no, there's the best interests of the people in the territory involved is not a consideration. We have seen this at the association used in the past to defeat things like, economic development, light industry, solar farms, that kind of stuff. Situations where the landowner wanted to do something, the township was fine with it, but the city didn't want it near them, so they just grabbed it, took it, and started regulating. Um, so this is one of the ones that are more objectionable in our view. So the procedural requirements that go with that one, they serve notice of the intention, and the town board can object to the chief ALJ within 90 days. But yep, once you're in there, you are in a full contested annexation case with all the expense and trouble that can represent. Um, there's another one that is honestly kind of weird. This one doesn't come up very often, but just so you're aware, it does exist. There are situations where the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency can order the connections of certain properties to city wastewater services. So if there's a water pollution issue, MPCA has a process, they've got their own statutes. And as a result of that, if they go through that process correctly, they can order connection. If that happens, it has annexation implications. So you can, if you have a particularly friendly nearby city or one that is willing to honor your boundaries, that can occur by contract. However, they also have a right to just annex it by exercising so there's a process found in 414.033. So if they're connecting it to the wastewater facility, they get to just kind of take it. But this one is basically unique in that it is not initiated by either the property owners, the city, or the township. It's something that's happening from MPCA's perspective. So it's a bit of a weird one. We don't see it very often at the Township Association, but it is a power that's kind of hanging out there. Um, Okay. One thing to be aware of if you are in this situation is that there's a right to reimbursement. So this is coming from Minnesota Statute 414.036, unless otherwise agreed to by the annexing municipality and the affected town. When an order or other approval under this chapter annexes part of a town to a municipality, they must provide reimbursement to the town for all or part of the taxable property annexed as part of the order. So there is, if you get a chunk of your land taken, you do have this little bit of consolation, I suppose. So that's a good thing to be aware of, and you should certainly be aware of it in cases where you are negotiating with the other side. Now, uh, orderly annexation agreements are probably the best defense against these sorts of things. Yeah, once you've negotiated one of these things, it becomes a contract between you and your neighboring city, and that can provide additional protections above and beyond what is provided by the actual statute itself. Of course, just the sheer fact of negotiating in the shadow of these annexation by ordinance means that it can be pretty difficult to get good deals out of cities under these things because they're aware that they can just take it under most circumstances and they don't have to ask your permission. They don't have to care about the best interests of anybody. Um, so this is a thing to potentially be careful of, but it is a good idea to try to get one with some additional protections on the books if you are able. Now, there is one critical piece that I try to mention every time I bring up orderly annexation agreements because I think people are surprised by this a lot, and that is if you're dealing with a situation where you've got multiple cities on your borders, um, you will need orderly annexation agreements with every city that's on your border. And the reason for that is a case called in re-annexation of certain real property to the city of Proctor from Midway Township. It's a Minnesota Supreme Court case from 2019. But basically, the situation in that one was this. Uh, Midway Township in the city of Duluth had had a long-standing and fairly friendly orderly annexation agreement. There was a city of Proctor and the township of Midway had some bad relations because Proctor was pretty aggressive using its annexation powers. And the city of Proctor used the powers that we were talking about earlier, those annexation by ordinance, to essentially defeat the existing orderly annexation agreement. That is, Minnesota Supreme Court said, doesn't matter, city of Duluth, doesn't matter, township of Midway, that you guys had already agreed to plan this thing long term. Uh, City of Proctor doesn't have to abide by that contract. They get to just take it, even though there was already a process laid out. So that's something that you're going to want to be very aware of if you find yourself in the situation where you've got multiple cities near your boundaries or on your boundaries. Um, okay, well, that is our presentation for this morning. Let me jump in and see if there are any questions from folks.
I have one, Graham. Discussing. Um, the orderly annexation agreements, if you have one, can that be changed or updated? Does that typically work? Is it long lasting? Is there a deadline on it? Is it a sunset date or?
Well, so mostly it's a matter of contract interpretation. So you certainly can, as a matter of negotiation, you can say we're going to review this thing every 10 years or every 15 years or something like that. Um, you can get into situations where old enough ones become dodgy. We've seen cases where old ones were not enforced, but that's, very old. There's not, as far as I'm aware, there's not like a specific sunset date put in the statute. However, that is something that you're going to want to think about, and it's probably a good idea to have one in the agreement just in case the thing becomes problematic later. So, Gussie, I believe that you wanted to say a few words. Is that right?
Yeah, I just wanted to give everybody a great thanks for coming to the trainings and stuff. We had 8 training sessions over 2 weeks in November. Successful, great questions. Not only did the trainees learn, but the trainers learned. We had scheduled about 175 people in advance had registered. More registered later, but it was I consider that a success. We had 8 3-hour trainings. Um, Also, there's an update here that you all need to be aware of. 2026 is an election year. So lots of busy work for clerks, lots of busy work for townships. We have township elections. We'll have a midterm election with a primary. And we've got some looming deadlines here. I'm going to say that we've got one coming up right away, and I've already had several calls on this. And that is the filing for the March elections. That needs to be it needs to be published by the 16th of December. So get your notice together for that. The filing begins on December 30th, 2025, and that filing ends on January 13th, 2026. And you need to be available it needs to be set up ahead of time by the clerks. Where are you going to be so that somebody can come and file from 1 to 5 on that last date? Also, the candidates can withdraw. Another question I've had recently. They can withdraw up until 5 p.m. on January 15th. And one of the things I encourage you to do, the Secretary of State's office puts out an election calendar every 2 years. If you don't have that, um, you need to go to the Secretary of State's website, download that. It's got all the important dates. And what I'm going to do is share this link for that in chat. And I'm going to try to. Let's see if I can grab it again. This is going to be helpful for you because you're going to need to know these days and dates. And if you're new clerk and treasurer and you don't know, um, there it is in chat for you. Go ahead to the Secretary of State's website there and download that township elections calendar. You're going to see it has 2024 and they're also, like I said, they put this out every 2 years. So it's going to go in through 2026, the important dates that you're going to need to have, when you need to put notices in. You're going to have training every 2 years. Election judges are trained. So make sure your election judges are trained and ready to go too. That's all I have today, Graham.
Jesse? All right, well, Lisa, you turning on your camera to speak to folks, or? Oh, you're muted again.
Here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Hopefully we get to see all your smiling faces coming up next week at the annual conference. And just a few reminders, it's coming up quick. Matt is busy working on the renewal for workman's comp. That means you're going to be receiving that email specifically for your township. So please, as Gussie just mentioned, with all the elections, etc., please make sure your information is updated with Matt/Matt. You can email it, you can call us, anything you need to do just to get it to us so we have your updated contact. Our primary contacts are the clerks and treasurers. Everyone's equally as important, but we have so many spaces that we can communicate via email for that audit coming up on January 1st. So with that said, please, I will leave in the group chat the information the email address. You can email if there's been any changes to your clerk, treasurer, or supervisors. So again, January 1st, that link will be specific to your township. Please do not forward it to anyone outside of your township. You will receive an error code. Other than that, just let us know if you have any questions and hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Well, and with that, if there are no other questions, thanks everybody for your time and attention, and I hope to see everybody at the annual conference. And Merry Christmas.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.